Well, it's midsummer in beautiful London and the sun is shining. My name is James P.S. and I'm the CEO of Fulhouse Limited. Now, here in London, we've got the races in Ascot, cricket at Lord's, and life just couldn't be better. Tennis at Queen's, and I really think London's never looked a more beautiful place to live, work and play, but you're looking outside is different to the news headlines. You'd think that one of Putin's nuclear Poseidon bombs was about to hit us. Shock, horror. Interest rates have reached 5%. And in true market fashion, everyone has overreacted and is predicting the end of the world, the end of the UK and civilization as we know it. Now, what I'd like to say, James tells you to relax. Pour yourself a cold drink or a warm green tea and sit back. Now, as you can see, I've got a couple of grey hairs and I've actually lived through way worse times and way worse headlines. I lost money on some investments, but on property, never. Now, let me just give you a small history lesson, which I think will be really insightful and is very simple. I want to show you what happens in an era of high interest rates to residential property prices in the UK. And let's look at three key dates in the last 50 years, 1979, 1992, and 2007. Now, a long time ago, you might say, but interest rates today are at 5%. When the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, came to power in 1979, she raised interest rates, wait for it, to 17%. What happened after this? Well, at 17%, this time preceded the largest sustained rise in UK property prices in UK history. And in the early 80s, they peaked with 16% in the year 1988 of property price inflation. Absolutely incredible. 12 years later, in 1992, when I bought my first flat, interest rates were at 12%. London property prices proceeded to fall about 30% over the next year, with national average decline of about 20%. And yes, of course, if I'd have sold my flat immediately, I would have been harbouring a huge loss, but I, like most property investors, don't buy property to sell immediately. When I sold some 8 years later, I'd already made 50%, which brings us chronologically to 2007, just before the recession and the banking collapse. Interest rates were higher then than they were now, 5.75%. And if you've watched one of my previous blogs, you would have seen it took the market less than 2 years in London to recover and show immediate gains. So what lessons can be drawn from history about house prices in the UK, more specifically in London, where many of our investors have large portfolios? Now, very briefly, this is a topic we could talk over for hours, and I'm necessarily simplifying it for the process of this short vlog. Three key points to be drawn, and we're only at 5% interest rates. Firstly, every high interest period in the recent 50 years has seen a Darwinian cull of those who are overgeared or who have not hedged their interest rate exposure. Lesson two is that the fallout of those that fail offers a massive opportunity to investors with cash looking to make medium and long-term gains as asset prices fall in these markets. This is a time of enormous opportunity. Now, the third lesson to be gleaned here is that the market always flies to quality. And where interest rates have risen to these extraordinary levels in the past, we've seen those areas outside London proportionally have the highest price drops. London has been insulated and is often still insulated from the worst of these falls by its extraordinary economic power and the international draw to foreign investors that make this such a great and attractive city. Final thing I'd like to leave you with today is a cover of a book that one of my relatives bought me in the early 1980s as a young man. It's by someone called Bob Beckman, who was a commentator of the time, an economic commentator at the time, and he wrote a book called Downturn. And this is an incredible diatribe of gloom and depression about the coming property and market collapse. And this relative gave it to me to stop me from buying property, as he was a convinced renter and he smugly felt that he would survive the coming meltdown. Now, unfortunately for him, and fortunately for me, I didn't follow his advice, because the meltdown that he predicted that would cause such cataclysmic collapse only transpired in 2008, some 25 years after he wrote the book. Now, in the intervening period, my relative hadn't invested in property, just in the stock market. He'd lost most of his pension and he had no hedges, and he waited for the meltdown that really never happened. So, needless to say, I don't take advice from doom-monger relatives, and I advise you to do the same. Now, please do come back to me or my team here in London or in China for any property investment or advice. We're looking forward to helping you, and I wish you a happy midsummer day.